What's going on, everyone? We're here today, finally, with the long-anticipated update to my Kuraz Fieldspell Control deck profile, or KFC. This version of the deck I innovated like about a week, maybe a couple weeks ago. I don't remember. I've been playing it nonstop in my Road to Top 10 series. It's been completely dominating on the ranked ladder with like some crazy, almost 90% win rate over the course of many matches. So yeah, extremely impressive performance. It's been blowing me away. I think it may be a sleeper choice for one of the more powerful decks of the format for sure, and definitely one that I think people ought to give a try. It is rather tricky and not very beginner friendly, so I can see why it might be difficult. Before we get into it, if you're just here to net deck me, I will put the dueling book deck link in the description down below. Though I do recommend, as I mentioned before, the deck's rather difficult, so I recommend that you watch the video in full to hear what I have to say about all the card choices and how they interact, because I think that will be very helpful. But anyway, let's just get started with the deck profile. So I think I kind of just want to run through the extra deck real quick first, so let's just do that. So you get out of the way. It's pretty simple. You got double fortress, the deck has a lot more room in the extra because we cut the plague now, so it's just the debris for tuners, meaning I feel like I have a bit more flexibility to just play whatever I want in the extra, so I see no reason not to have double fortress. Then we just got Mistworm. We've got all the good level 8 monsters here, except Dark End, because we pretty much can't make Dark End. We can make Stardust and RDA relatively easily. Here, these next two are pretty important. We've got Black Rose and 2 copies of Ancient Fairy Dragon. So these you're gonna make a lot. Black Rose, very, very powerful. You can, if you make it without Dandy, you can nuke the board with Gear Town on board and then just end up with a Gear Dragon against an empty board, which is pretty nice. Ancient Fairy Dragon, this card's very important for a lot of the field spell stuff you do. You might use the search effect. If you want to proc Gear Town, you can't use the search effect, but you can just pop Gear Town with it. It's another way to get it off, which is really good. So Ancient Fairy Dragon, very important, and a nice defensive wall as well. And then we just got a couple more generic ones. I don't think I've ever made this guy, but I have it in here just in case I ever need to. I mean, given that Debris is the only tuner, I think it is logical to play. And we just got, 4 to 5. Yeah, most of this you're not going to make. It's mostly just these 3, occasionally like Stardust or RDA. But we've got a full 15 card extra because it'd be dumb not to. Man, this is hard to get all this out of the way with one hand, but all right, let's just push it off to the side and deal with it later. All right, so into the main deck. Starting off, we've got double Kuraz here. So Kuraz is the main centerpiece from which this entire deck was built. I wanted to build a deck with this card that wasn't just like a turbo sort of strategy with Phoenix Blade and DDR. So I decided to investigate a way I could make like a more control-oriented build that uses Kuraz to grind card advantage. So then, of course, the challenge becomes, well, what are we playing Kuraz with? What are we popping it with? So that's a whole other thing I'm going to get into. But first, I'd like to point out that I'm down to 2 copies of this. One of the sort of changes I've made is I've slimmed down on the payoff half of my engine in favor of playing a couple more like starters and utility type of cards. So we're down to 2 Kuraz. The card is a brick. Technically, it doesn't do anything in your opening hand. You do want to see it over the course of the game, though. I think 2 is a pretty appropriate ratio. If you're someone who's used to more modern sort of deck building, you kind of just have to accept that weird ratios are a thing that are optimal in old formats. So, yep. So the first like philosophical answer to the question of what do we play with Kuraz, what are we popping, is Gear Towns. So we got our Gear Dragons, we got our Gear Towns. So it's really important that the stuff you play with Kuraz is cards that are like independently useful. So not just like memes like Smoke Grenade. You need cards that you can actually do something with if you don't have the way to pop it. Or if you don't have Kuraz specifically. And Gear Town's obviously a very good example of that. Just being able to summon out Gear Dragons, pretty nice, pretty okay, pretty good play. And of course you can pop it with Kuraz. You can get the draw effect and still search the Gear Dragon because they're simultaneous. Similar to how the Ancient Fairy life point gain and destroying it is also simultaneous. So yeah. Then to go with the Fieldspell package, we play each of these, Mausoleum and Black Garden. Black Garden is super important for this deck. Each of these is super important. Mausoleum too, actually. I think you should definitely play both of these. I think the Fieldspell ratio with 5 Fieldspells is really good, first of all. And each of these individually is just amazing for the deck. They provide a ton of utility. Mausoleum, you play a ton of tribute monsters. You can use it to cheat out Kuraz. You can use it to just summon a beater and hit. You can use it to play around oppression. It just does so much. Garden lets you play around Gores, lets you stop them from clapping you back after you've committed the board. It lets you cheese damage with Gajiltron by summoning a token. You can use it to get Rat online, which we'll get to that. We're playing a Rat package now. So it just does so much. Most importantly, however, you can use it to revive Kuraz if there are 3 Garden tokens on the field, because Kuraz has that multiple of 800 stats, which means this is effectively another like Monster Reborn for Kuraz that you can just play in the deck, and that's just really insane. You can get it online with a single Debris Dragon too, which is really cool. And Kuraz is interesting in that way, in that it's the only Monarch that will proc when it's just special summon to the field, or at least the only old one that works that way. Obviously, there are new ones that are different, so yeah. And to round off the Fieldspell package, we just got triple terraforming, because of course we do. Shouldn't really need to explain that. We got all this Fieldspell stuff going on. We need 3 terraformings. The other kind of answer of what independently good card I can play with Kuraz to get advantages, Dandelion. So Dandelion will just leave tokens all over the place, and you just turn them into real advantage with Kuraz, so that's pretty neat. We also play a full kind of plant package here. You can use Mausoleum to get out Titanial, and Garden gives you free tokens to use with her effect, so she's pretty good, might as well play her. And have the Lone Fires to get stuff, to get to her, get to Dandy, get more targets for your Debris Dragon. Debris is really important because it's a way to just 1-card Ancient Fairy Dragon. So you're going to be doing that a lot in this deck. And we play many Debris targets. So Debris is one of your like big plays. I slimmed it down to 2 again. It's kind of similar to Kuraz. It's a dead card in your starting hand, but you really want to see it later on. So I think 2 is a pretty appropriate ratio for that. And that's what we're going with for now. Next off, we're going to go through these 4 cards. So we play triple Upstart. Upstart's kind of interesting. In Edison, there are all of these like power 1-of staples that you really want to get to, and Upstart's great for that. The thing is, the life points matter a lot in most matches, because giving your opponent an extra turn is just really, really, really bad. So most people don't play Upstarts, and they're correct not to. However, in this deck, we're generally putting like so much damage on the board that like everything you do is a 2-turn clock anyway, even if you resolve a couple Upstarts. So it's kind of like you can just afford to play it, and therefore should, but also you want to get certain combinations of cards in your hand at maximum consistency, and I think Upstart is very beneficial for that as well. So that's why we're on Upstarts. Let's move this so that we can get to the sort of new package that we're playing, which is the Giant Rats. We were already on Card Trooper, so Rat's good for that. We've also thrown in Grand Mole. Grand Mole's great for just dealing with threats that Gajiltron won't answer, like Catastor or Spirit Reaper or Set Monster or Colossal Fighter, or just anything that you can't just run over. Grand Mole's a really great answer to, and being able to search it is awesome. This next card is kind of the inspiration for playing the whole Rat package. This is Minefield Driller. Now this card is, you probably don't know what this does. Basically, it's a 1500 Earth monster, so you can get it off Rat, and it has an effect where when it leaves the field, so if this face-up card you control leaves the field, if it leaves the field in any way, you can add a field spell from your grave to your hand. So it's kind of like a weird sort of floater that just goes off if it leaves the field in any way. It will miss timing, which sucks, but it's a neat form of recursion as well as a way to just toolbox back a field spell to your hand. And the fact that it just goes off, like, it, no matter how it leaves the field, makes it really obnoxious to deal with, actually. If they don't have a way to, like, cheese it and make it miss timing, then, like, you know, your opponent can Monarch this, you still get back a field spell, they can DD Warrior Lady, they can Phoenix Wing it, they can Bottomless it, but you still get to float with it, which is really neat. I've been a big fan of this card. I think it's been testing really well. I always like drawing it. It's a nice little addition to the rat package in this deck in particular. And I think the rat package has been doing really well. Just having a couple more starters in this deck has been very beneficial, I think. And there were already things like Dandelion and Card Trooper, and just being able to throw in a couple extra things like this that give us some more sort of utility options, more answers, more ways to get started, I think has been really nice. Rat also goes well with the Black Garden, as I mentioned earlier. So yeah, just a really cool little addition to the deck. So what we've mainly done is slimmed down on Debris and Kuraz. We still play them in significant numbers because they're important for our big power plays, and just filled in a couple more like middle of the deck kind of cards like this that can help us get our plays going. And I think that's been very good. So final two monsters, we've got a Sangan. Searches basically everything. I mean, searching Debris is really important, but you can get Grand Mole or Trooper or Lone Fire, anything, so awesome. Then we just got a Tragodia. Gores didn't make the cut, but I think Tragodia is really good. Took out Gores. It just felt like it changed the way we had to play the game and made it kind of awkward because of the whole Fieldspell thing, so it didn't quite make the cut in here. Tragodia I think is still really sweet. You definitely want to play a type of game where you're keeping a lot of cards in your hand or plussing with Kuraz plays, and Tragodia is really beneficial with that. Plus, you play a lot of levels to mess around with, which can be pretty neat as well. Finally, for the spells, we've got 3 staples. That should finish off the spell lineup. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Nothing to say really there. So here we've just got the trap cards at the bottom. Call of the Haunted. This low-key might be the best card in the entire deck. This has got to be the single best Call of the Haunted deck in all of Edison format. So, like, the good thing is you can do with Call are already here. Like, you can call back one of these floaters and just get a plus if your opponent tries to out your face down card. You can call back a big beater like Titanium or Gear Dragon and just hit. But most significantly, you could call back Kuraz. And Kuraz, as I mentioned earlier, will go off even if it's special summons. So Call of the Haunted, I mean, this is just Pot of Greed. You can flip it, get back Kuraz, draw 2. That's wild. You can flip it, get back Kuraz, pop your normal summoned floater plus Gear Town, and that's crazy. You can flip it and use it to out your opponent's field as like a disruption on their turn or a way to go for game on your turn, or you could do it in end phase. I mean, it's wild. Call of the Haunted is insane in here. Just every time you draw it feels so sacky and so broken, which is wild because Call's not a card that you typically think of as like, oh, I got sacked by this one. Usually you think like Brain Con or Dust Shoot, Future Fusion, but in this deck, Call is just so nuts. It's insane. Rest of the traps, mostly just staple stuff. We got the Shoot, we got the big sweepers, we got the Solemn Judgment, and a couple Phoenix Wings as extra forms of removal. As I mentioned earlier, it's nice to have some pieces of monster removal to deal with things that you can't just swing over, and it can out like Oppression or any kind of problem card as well. So it's just another way to deal with whatever you need to deal with. So yeah, I like it at 2. I think it's a pretty good ratio. Useful for getting Dandy out of your hand. If you've got a Giltron stuck in your hand, you don't have a way to get it out of your hand. It's an efficient usage of that as well. So yeah. Anyway, that's the completed deck list. Overall, I think this is by far my favorite deck. I think it's by far my most competitively powerful deck as well. And it's by far just my like wackiest jank deck too, which just makes it all the sweeter. I'm a huge fan of this list right now. I think it's really, really strong. And like I said, I will put the list in the description if any of you want to try it out. I think it's a really cool deck, really rewarding, really fun to play. So I definitely cannot recommend it enough. And I hope you guys have enjoyed me like laying it all out, going through all the cards and explaining everything in this deck profile. Sorry it took so long to get out, but I was waiting on the cards, which finally came today, so that was nice. But yeah, that's kind of everything I got to say about this deck. So like, comment, subscribe. Peace out.